A time for change, to unmask the truth, to unmask the rot in our communities. Unmasking the Truth will focus on the effects of corruption on women, prefer solution and demand for accountability. Unmasking the Truth will be on this radio station every first Monday by 5:30 p.m. And we ask you to join us to condemn corruption, to demand for accountability, and to work together for a better Nigeria. Unmasking the Truth is an initiative of St. Ives Communications in partnership with Voice of Women and supported by the MacArthur Foundation.
According to a non-governmental organization, Stand to End Rape report, more than 64% of women have encountered unwanted sexual approaches while attempting to perform their profession in Nigeria. A young woman who shared a story with our women radio reporter on how she was harassed while searching for a job at a telecommunications company in Nigeria. She spoke to us on how she got the job, and she was later asked to give sexual favors in exchange for the job. She narrated how this company had a strong history of sexual harassment whereby ladies are threatened to sell their body in exchange for jobs, promotions, or even face termination if they refuse. Although there are laws and practices in place to prevent and handle sexual harassment, it still affects a lot of women in Nigeria. Sexual harassment affects the emotional and physical well-being of these women. It also affects the job happiness and possibilities for career progression for female entrepreneurs and for female employees. Today, we would examine how women are affected by sexual harassment in the employment process. Unmasking the Truth on your radio station today will discuss sexual harassment in the employment process and how women are affected by this injustice. My name is Esther Alaribe. Unmasking the Truth is an initiative of St. Ives Communications in partnership with Voice of Women and supported by the MacArthur Foundation. We spoke to women who told us about the sexual harassment they faced in their employment process and how it has affected them. Let's hear what these women have to say.
I went to a firm for an interview. I went in the hope of getting employed, but to my greatest surprise, the man that was interviewing me was giving me this nasty look, and then suddenly the line of conversation, the line of questioning changed to something else. He was asking me personal and private things that is not part of an interview questions. I was like, I'm sorry, sir, I don't understand. Is this part of the job description? Because last I checked, this was not what I came for. He was like, welcome back to Nigeria, where you have to give, to collect. That I'm a lady, I understand how this thing runs, that I'm supposed to know, that I'm supposed to give him something for him to get something in return. Then he made suggestions for us to meet outside and then meet and do, whatever.
Ọ̀gá tí mo bá ṣiṣẹ́ ó gbà mí kò fi lọ̀ mí kí n tó wọlé. Ìgbà tí mo bẹ̀rẹ̀ iṣẹ́ báyìí ó bẹ̀rẹ̀ sí ní fi ìbálòpọ̀ lórí káàkiri. Ó tún ní àwọn ọ̀rẹ́ mẹ́fà. Àwọn ọ̀rẹ́ mẹ́fẹ̀ẹ̀fà yìí ni wọ́n wá ní ìbẹ̀rẹ̀ pẹ̀pẹ̀ láti fi rìn mí. Ìgbà tó yá mi láti fi ibi iṣẹ́ mi sílẹ̀.
The sexual harassment women face in the employment process and its effect is devastating. My guest today is going to shed light on how to address this menace. My guest today, I'm going to be speaking to Omoumi Ogunrotimi, Executive Director, Gender Mobile Initiative. Good morning, Omoumi. How are you doing today? Good morning, Omoumi. How are you doing today? Can you hear me?
Yes, I can hear you.
All right. Thank you so much for joining us this morning.
It's a pleasure to be here. Thank you for having me.
All right. Yes. Now, can you talk about sexual harassment in the employment process and how it affects women?
Thank you very much, Esther, for that very important question, and I very much welcome the question.
Oh, okay. So we'll try to reconnect with Omoumi in a bit. The network is not so favorable from her end. And yes, we're just talking about sexual harassment in the employment process and how it affects women, how it deters women from actually going further or progressing in their career path. And this is something that should be addressed, because over time, different women have also had to tell their stories of how this has affected them and how they've had to put up with this. Now, it happens in different forms for women. Women at every point in time suffer one thing or the other, and people just expect women to want to always give out something to get something. And when you say give out something, giving out your body for exchange for maybe a job or a position or something that you actually merit, something that should be given to you on account of merit, a position that you're worth, a job that your qualifications and what you know would bring so much value to that job or to that position. But you are expected, just because you are a woman, that you have to do something else to make it work. You have to give so much. It is so difficult. It is a very difficult situation where we find ourselves, and something has to be done about it. And that's why we're having this conversation today, because we need to do away with all of these kind of practices in our society. Yes, Mommy, we have you back on.
Thank you very much, Esther. So
Yes.
I was, actually thanking you for inviting me to speak to this very important issue,
Okay.
which I very much welcome the chance to speak to. And I had earlier mentioned, I think a good starting point would be to sort of deconstruct, what sexual harassment means, and then try to look at it within the context of employment or hiring process. So a lot of times when people mention sexual harassment, I think it's been sort of normalized in a way that's just mentioned in passing. However, sexual harassment is a very serious issue that constitutes, an unwelcome act or behavior. It could be physical contact, it could be advances, it could be for sexual, it could be making sexually tainted remarks, it could even be sending someone pornography, or it could be any other unwelcome, physical act. So it's also, could be defined as something that, has to do with using your position of power to import sexual requirements into the workplace or even anywhere into the hiring process.
Okay, so Amoni, your the reception from your end is not so clear. We'll try to reconnect with you in a bit, because I really want to hear what Amomi has to say on this one. This is a topic that is very, very important and sensitive, because it affects a lot of women. And the fact that women have to give so much in different instances. I mean, just recently there was a report of a lecturer at Tasholari University of Education in Ogun State. This lecturer was alleged to have tried to lure a student to his bed, all in an exchange for grades as well. And when she did not give into this, it also escalated into having to extort her for monetary value. And I'm glad that the Independent Corrupt Practices and Other Related Offences Commission picked this up, and now this man is having to answer for this. I feel like if a lot of people know that there are consequences for these actions, and when they carry out these actions and they get the consequences immediately, people would actually act normally and not do what they're not supposed to do and just use their power. That's what Omome was trying to say that if you get to use your position, your power against anybody, or to put somebody in a particular position, then you should not even be there in the first place. Yes, Omoromi.
Thank you very much, Esther. Sorry about the
it's fine.
connection. Yeah. So just to be coincide. So I was actually providing some context to what sexual harassment means, but I think more contextually now, let's discuss sexual harassment in the context of the hiring process. So this actually may involve a hiring manager, not even necessarily a manager, but someone that, the applicant or the job candidate perceives to be in a position of power, or could be in a position to make decisions, telling the applicant or the candidate that he or she will get the job in exchange for a sexual favor, or that the candidate will not get the job if he or she does not submit to the request. Now, employers are generally liable for sexual harassment by a supervisor if the harassment results in a tangible employment action, such as, failing to hire the candidate, or even if you could actually establish that actual damage has been done. But again, within the context of, hiring, when individuals meeting for interview customarily even shake hands, which, sometimes is an accepted form of contact, sometimes the handshake could even go past the elbow. Can you hear me?
Yes, I can hear you clearly.
Yeah, great. Yeah, so in the hiring process, sometimes we move into a physical space where we have interviews, we have handshakes with people who are probably on the interview panel, which is, an accepted form of contact. But it's not permissible for an interviewer to actually touch you in a way that makes you feel uncomfortable or that you believe is offensive. So an instance could be placing a hand on your knee, putting a hand around your shoulder, or even trying to massage a part of your body. But at the same time, you would agree with me that while some forms of contact could be acceptable to some people, it might be unacceptable to some other people. And that's why I had earlier on defined what sexual harassment means. There are two elements, the behavior must be sexual based and it must actually be unwelcome.
Okay.
Now, the whole question about something being unwelcome, it's not a function or it's not a decision for the perpetrator to make. It's a decision for the victim or the recipient of such action to make. So when you're thinking about, sexual harassment within the context of recruitment or hiring, I think it needs to be actually, we need to be more light on it for people to actually really understand that some patterns of behavior constitute sexual harassment. But because of the lack of definitional clarity, a lot of times we allow some of these things to slide and then it's normalized. It becomes, a part of our everyday life because people have not been held accountable. Sometimes you find people offering a job in exchange for sexual favors or even a date. Somebody comes into your office to have a job interview and you're commenting on the person's body. You're making derogatory comments about the person's gender or even inquiring about a prospective employee's sexual history. Like that's sexual harassment. Or you're sitting close to an applicant and then you're placing a hand on her knee or on his knee, or you're massaging the person's shoulders or legs. And I would say again that it's important that we understand that although sexual harassment can happen to anyone no matter their gender, but research has shown over and over again that while men also experience sexual harassment, the prevalence and intensity of the experience are higher for women. And that's just to also tell you that sexual harassment is power-centered and is highly gendered.
All right. Thank you so much, Omomi, for having to expatiate on this, because truly women bear the brunt of this and it affects women so much that a lot of women, as it is right now, they would always want to put all of this into consideration before going for even a job interview. So there are conversations that we really need to have. Thank you so much, Omomi. Unmasking the Truth looks at the effect of corruption from the gender lens. Let's go back to the street to get more comments from other women on their experiences of sexual harassment in the employment process.
Sexual harassment, it happened to me when I was around 17 to 18 years. After my secondary school, I was looking for a job before my admission. I got the first employment, really, without stress. But after I got the job, my boss started disturbing me with sex every day. He has 6 friends. Those his 6 friends, they came at different time to harass me. I got tired, I had to leave the job.
Mo rántí ìgbà kan tí mo wáṣẹ́ lọ síbì kan. Nígbà tí mo débi tí mo ti fẹ́ wáṣẹ́ lọ, wọ́n ṣe interview fún mi. Wọ́n fọ̀rọ̀ wá mi lẹ́nu wò, wọ́n ṣe gbogbo nǹkan tó yẹ kán ṣe. Nígbà tó ṣe everything tó yẹ kán ṣe tán, wọ́n létà pè mí wípé kí n má bínú pé kò sí àyè fún mi níbi iṣẹ́ àwọn. Lẹ́yìn ọjọ́ méjì ni igbákejì ọ̀gá wọn nílé iṣẹ́ yẹn ló pè mí. Ó wà lára àwọn tó ṣe ìfọ̀rọ̀wánilẹ́nuwò fún mi pé òun ní àyè kan báyìí o. Pé ṣùgbọ́n tí mo bá fẹ́ àyè yẹn, mo ní láti bá wọn ṣe nǹkan tí kò tọ́, tí mi ò fẹ́.
So you can see that women actually go through a whole lot. Now, Omomi, what are the effects of sexual harassment on women's mental and physical health?
So thank you very much, Esther. I think I also need to say, just for us to understand what the scale of the problem is, so that we see that it's really profound, Okay. Research actually indicates that 1 in 4 women have experienced sexual harassment in the workplace, And you imagine that when one has an interview, especially a physical interview, it's common to stress over what to wear, what to say, what not to say. But no one expects to be sexually harassed, during a job interview. So when can you hear me?
Yes, I can hear you clearly, Omomi.
Great. So when you think about, the effect of sexual harassment on women, we know that the dynamics of power and, intersecting social identities sort of subject women disproportionately to negative outcomes such as post-traumatic stress. That is something that women experience a lot. There is the part of depression, and there is also impeded safety. Imagine coming to a workplace or going to a workplace to actually be hired.
Okay.
That's a place where you intend to spend the most part of maybe your next 2, 3, 4, 5 years, depending on how stable you are as a human being. And then imagine on the first time you are having an interaction with this company, you get sexually harassed. So another thing also could be that sexual harassment, it interferes unreasonably with women's ability to perform their jobs. Already there is this bias, there's this resentment for women, there's this stereotype for women that we underperform, and you see that women are held to a higher standard. So when women are then denigrated with sexual harassment, it definitely could, undermine or impair their ability to perform on the job. The productivity and pay of victims of sexual harassment as well as that of their co-workers are expected to be lower, because there's a way sexual harassment induces inefficient turnover, whichever way we think about it. There could be absenteeism, and it could even waste precious time, because when you're on a job, or even, you've been sexually harassed in the course of your employment process, you probably see that the person who harassed you is someone you need to consistently interface with. You would keep avoiding the person. Yeah. You'd keep avoiding the person. Then there is extensive evidence of also lower job satisfaction. There is the worse psychological and physical health. There is also less commitment to the organization. And guess what? The extreme cases, also there's a higher likelihood of quitting one's job. As a matter of fact, there's a study that showed that 21% of those who have been sexually harassed reported that their productivity declined as a consequence. So, and when you think about it again, women who even muster the courage to come forward to report also risk, some form of reprisal, because in the first place, they do not expect to muster the courage because they are also at the lower rung of the ladder. So this even results in even lower job satisfaction and worse psychological and health outcomes for women. So you can imagine the incalculable impact of this on women and girls generally. And I would say again that, to have a balanced conversation and also emphasize the all-round attendance impact of sexual harassment, I would also mention that there are costs to the company organization, as the case may be. So when you think about this, the adverse consequences for women who are victims of sexual harassment, it automatically translates into less productive work environments. And the cost to organizations could also include increased turnover and even absenteeism, lower maybe group productivity, because a lot of times people have to work as a team. So, and it's a team because everyone is bringing their comparative strength, and putting their best foot forward. So the moment there is a waned energy on one's part, it could affect the entire team. And then there are also even legal expenses, including the cost of litigation and also paying damages to victims. I recall coming across a U.S. report that states that sexual harassment claim in the U.S. through the Equal Opportunities Commission was in the region of $70 million USD in 2019. So that's to tell you, the financial cost to the organization, but it's worse more on individuals because women have to figure this all out by themselves.
Okay, Omomi. So, since you've touched on the legal part, what are the legal protections that are available for women in employment process?
So, first off, let me say that Nigeria does not have any specific legislation on sexual harassment in employment process or in the work process or in recruitment process. But persons have actually sought legal protection by solely relying on international treaties and the National Industrial Court rule. And for the benefit of those who aren't familiar with, what treaty means, treaties are like covenants, protocols, agreements that are international in nature. They could be bilateral, multilateral, they could be globalized. So, for example, we have the International Bill of Rights, that's the UNDHR. We have the African Charter on Human and People's Rights on the Rights of Women in Africa, which is regionalized, just to put that into proper perspective. But in general, I would say that there are great precedents for us to actually fall back on. And one that is really worthy of mention is the case of AJK Mazuka against Microsoft Nigeria. I don't know if that's the case that you're quite familiar with, but this particular case was a case of sexual harassment, which was instituted as a fundamental rights action under Section 34 and 42 of the 1999 Constitution of the Federal Republic of Nigeria as amended. And these two sections, talk about right to dignity of human person and right to freedom from discrimination. And the court also relied on, Articles 2, 5, 14 and 15 of the African Charter on Human and People's Rights, and that's why I have to, start by providing some context on what treaty means, So in this case, the victim was sexually harassed by another employee in the workplace. Okay. She reported to the human resource manager of the company and also the manager, of the company, and nothing was done about it. The work environment became so hostile, and her employment was subsequently terminated, which is something that happens in a lot in the spaces that we occupy, because she couldn't succumb to the sexual demands. Now, the court held that the termination actually amounted to the violation of the applicant's fundamental rights to human dignity, and the damages of 13 million naira against the perpetrator, against the human resource manager, and even the company was approved by the court. So, and another interesting precedent to this, which I would like to, also share. Can you hear me?
Yes, I can hear you clearly. Go ahead.
Okay, great. Yeah. So I was saying that, another precedent which I would like to share is also the case of Dorothy Adeze against CFG Real Estate. Now, this is something that happens especially in the banking sector. The victim was instructed to use her beauty sort of to lure men to patronize the properties of the company. And that was made a condition for her to be retained. Her employment was eventually terminated because she couldn't play ball. And the court awarded 2 million damages to her, and it was awarded against the company. Now, we are all familiar with the VAP law. It provides for sexual harassment, but not as explicitly as expected. And the judiciary has been innovative and pragmatic in determining, sexual harassment cases by relying on that's the ILO Convention, the National Industrial Court Rule, and the Constitution of the Federal Republic of Nigeria. But one clear legal protection that I think people have also deferred to is the Corrupt Practices and Related Offences Act, which is renowned for the prominence it has accorded strategic litigation of sexual harassment cases. And the logic behind this is the acknowledgement of sexual harassment as a power-centered form of violence. And that explains why sexual harassment is prevalent in spaces that, are characterized by large and small power differentials, such as institutions of higher learning, even the workspace, churches, and all of that. I'm sure that you'd recall that the OAU professor was convicted on the strength of, the combined sections of relevant sections in the ICPC Act. And, there are also ongoing cases. And I think that's something that we can all defer to see how we can really harness those relevant provisions.
All right.
And, in general, very few workplaces have a sexual harassment policy that also clearly stipulate grievance redress mechanism. Emphasis on very few places. I think I'll stop there, yeah.
All right. Thank you so much, Omomi. Wow. So much to say on this. Eye-opener, I must say. Unmasking the Truth on your radio station is an initiative of St. Ives Communications in partnership with Voice of Women and supported by the MacArthur Foundation. It is important that we get to hear more voices. Let's hear from the women.
I was asked to see the manager, that the manager wants to see me. I went to the manager's office. He said the thing he would like me to do is to be a good girl. I said, okay, sir, I will be a good girl. As I stood up to go, he asked me to hold on. He drew his seat close to me, held my hand, and started caressing me. I said, please excuse me, sir. I came here for a job interview and I have gotten the job. I hope to resume work on Monday. He said to me, if I'm ready to work with him, then I should resume work on Monday. But if I'm not ready to work with him, I should not resume work on Monday. I said, sir, please, I don't understand. He said, if I'm ready to see him at so hotel this particular time, then I should give him a call. That means I'm ready to resume work on Monday. But if I'm not ready to see him at that particular hotel, I should kiss that particular work goodbye.
The things that women actually do go through. Well, Omomi. So let me take your final words on this conversation and the best practices that we can adopt to support women who have experienced sexual harassment during employment process.
Thank you, Esther. So I would say best practices. Sexual harassment, I think, has to be criminalized. generally, sexual harassment is largely, addressed as a civil offense and not criminal. But I think the Lagos State took the right step in the right direction by being the first state to criminalize sexual harassment by virtue of Section 262 of the Criminal Law of Lagos, So retaining sexual harassment as a civil offense, despite the severe impact and its widespread prevalence, I think is inimical to our collective efforts. And it sort of, minimizes people's experiences of sexual harassment. Mm-hmm. Another best practice I would like to touch on is that I think every workplace should have comprehensive sexual harassment prohibition policy that stipulates reporting channels and also protects victims from reprisals. And I think finally, I would also say that sexual harassment needs to be tackled both socially and legally. Yes, we're looking at the law. We also need to look at norms, practices that sort of enable sexual harassment to thrive.
All right.
Enacting comprehensive and effective legislation on sexual harassment is important, but the mere presence of policy isn't enough. So we need to put mechanisms in place for implementation, and we need to continue to raise awareness. So on a final note, I would say that ending sexual harassment is a collective responsibility of everyone. So when you see something, you should say something. Be a proactive bystander. When you see sexual harassment happen, try to step in, to prevent it.
All right. Thank you so much, Omomi. Thank you for being on the program today.
Thank you for having me.
All right. Yes, that was Omomi Ogunrotimi, Executive Director, Gender Mobile Initiative. And big thanks to Omomi for unmasking the truth on corruption with me today. Sexual harassment in the employment process is a major issue affecting women in Nigeria. To come back to this issue, employers need to promote a workplace culture that prioritizes respect, dignity, and ensures equality. And this is going to provide different rooms for people to thrive and actually do well at their job, especially for women. This will help to create a world where all women can be free from harassment and discrimination, and our women must at all costs be protected. So if you have a story on corruption in your community that you would like us to talk about, you can send us your comments, your contributions on 070-317-56537, and we'll be sure to showcase your story. Unmasking the Truth on Effects of Corruption on Women from the Gender Lens is an initiative of St. Ives Communications in partnership with Voice of Women and supported by the MacArthur Foundation. Thanks to the producer Taiwo Adeleye and the executive producer Tom Okewali Shonaya. My name is Esther Alaribe. Do have a good day.
WFM 91.7.
Radio never sounded so cool.
WFM 91.7.